So the prophecy of Daniel, the statue, the head of gold, arms and chest of silver, abdomen of bronze, and then the legs of iron. And so he said, King Nebuchadnezzar, you're the head of gold, the richest one. And then after you is going to become something a little inferior, but it's going to be two sides. So that's the Medo-Persian Empire. But it's going to be conquered by a lesser kingdom, but a stronger metal. And that's Alexander the Great, right? And the bronze weapons that they used. And then the Romans had iron weapons. And so there's the legs of iron, but it splits in two. Eastern Roman Empire, Western Roman Empire. And then the feet are iron and clay. And I am not a prophecy scholar, but I did read something that I thought was sort of interesting. It says that the feet of iron and clay, and it didn't mix. And I thought, okay, what is left over from this long period of time of the Roman Empire, East and West? And this article said radical Islam, of Muslim immigrants coming into Western nations that were part of the old Roman Empire, right? So Europe and England, and then by connection, America, drawing its heritage from there. But the fundamentalist Muslim immigrants coming in, and they're not assimilating. They're going into Germany, and they're not becoming Germans. They're going into France, they're not becoming French. They're going into England, they're not becoming English. They want to set up their own culture, their own community, their own Sharia laws, and it's breaking up the unity of these nations. And so if this statue, if this is the time period, and that's how, again, I'm not a scholar, so I'm not saying this for certain, but if it crumbles, the prophecy of Daniel says that this statue will crumble, and out of it will be a stone cut without hands. It's going to smash into it, and then that stone will turn into a mountain of the Lord. And then, then there's the end times, the glory of the Lord. So it's a idea that God is working through history. The goal is he created us for fellowship. There's plan A and plan B. He blesses us. We turn to him out of gratefulness. If we don't, he says he gives us over to our own devices. C.S. Lewis put it, said, there's two ways. I'm paraphrasing. I wrote a book called Believe, and I put the quote in there correctly. But it's God, there's the two ways, is Lord, thy will be done, or the Lord says, fine, have it your way. Right? And so we either surrender our will to God, or he's like, okay, I'm going to give you over to your own devices. He says he hides his faith. He says, fine. And then what happens? It's going to go south and turn bad, and then we're going to end up turning to the Lord out of desperation. On a theological thought, how many wills are there in heaven? Well, with one, it's God's will.
Yes.
Our Father who art in heaven, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's God's will being done in heaven. So in Isaiah, where Satan 5 times said, I will ascend to the mountain of the north. I will be above the throne of God. I will be like the most. 5 times Satan said, I will. It's like, wait a second, we got 2 wills going on. We got God's will and we got the devil's will, and they're not the same, so there's division. There's war, there's conflict, there's war in heaven, and the devil's cast out, because there can only be one will in heaven for there to be peace. The devil's cast out. He gets Adam to follow his will instead of God's will. And he begins to go in there tempting people to choose something other than God's will. So part of our life's journey is to get our will hammered out of us and surrender to God's will. Why? Because you're not going to take your will with you to heaven. Because if you did, there'd be 2 wills in heaven again, and there'd be war. And so the only one's going in is God's will. Even Jesus, sweat and drops of blood, and he says, Father, not my will, but thine be done. Mm-hmm. There can only be one will for there to be peace, and it's God, and it's a good will. He created you out of nothing, and he wants to love you for the rest of eternity.